Hey guys, welcome back to Politics by the Numbers. Today, I'm going to explain some of the most fundamental and important things about how our voting system works. Now, I'm going to make this very simple so that everybody understands it today. And it's so important because there's a lot of frustration with our politics today. A lot of people, they go to the voting booth when it's time for the general election and they say, I don't like any of these candidates. In 2016, we actually saw some of the most unpopular candidates that have ever run. We had Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump, and people, by and large, did not like these candidates. But they won out over all these other people, and today I'm going to talk about how that happens. So, politics is kind of like sports, but for a different kind of nerd, I suppose. And just like in sports, you have something that looks like this, right? When you look at the finals, the general election, right, where it's Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump, that's kind of like the Super Bowl. That's the last part of the election where it's all down to the wire, and that's like the most important thing. But when you think about the Super Bowl, it's only the most important game of the season for two teams. For all the other teams, the other 30 teams that didn't make it to the Super Bowl, the most important game for them was already lost. And it was lost weeks or even months before the Super Bowl even happened. So I'm going to relate that to politics now because we're going to talk about the primary election. The primary election decides who the nominees are going to be. So let's take a look. Let's simplify this here. So this here represents the winner, right? That's like the winner of the Super Bowl or the winner of the presidential election, which would have been Donald Trump in 2016. Now, here, this here would represent A and B. This would be like the Democratic primary over here, and this would be basically the Republican primary over here. You have a couple different options, and then whichever option wins out goes to be the final and the final nominee, and then the winner is whoever wins out from those two. So I've simplified this to be A and B, 1 and 2, but over here you actually had, so like for example, Hillary Clinton went up against Bernie Sanders and some other people that no one really knew about. And then Donald Trump went up against, for example, Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, Jeb Bush, and 14 other people on stage that nobody had ever heard of. So what happens is, in those primary elections, there's not a lot of people paying attention yet. So a lot of people didn't necessarily know who all the nominees were. So for example, on the Republican side, there was a really good guy named John Kasich that nobody really knew about, but he was actually a really good guy. And then Bernie Sanders was a much better candidate, according to most people, and I would agree, than Hillary Clinton was. So you had better people on both sides, but what happens is no one's really paying attention yet, and the media focuses in on who's ever the most divisive, whoever was the most newsworthy. And when someone's on stage like Donald Trump was saying that his penis was bigger, that was the most ridiculous thing, and it got so much coverage, and he was doing all these things that got coverage, and that helped him get the nomination. So what can we do? What can be done to improve on our political system? Well, what you can do is start paying attention earlier. So for example, there are some candidates in the running right now that most people haven't even heard of. For example, Andrew Yang most people haven't heard of him. And then Bernie Sanders is now he's becoming much more popular. He's a great candidate. Andrew Yang's a great candidate. And on the right, you only have Donald Trump. There's nobody else who's even really worth mentioning because they are not going to win. They decided against having a primary, but then they were kind of forced to. So we're not going to get into that too much. Essentially, the most important thing you can do is, first of all, Google search. Step one is you Google search and you start to figure out who these candidates are. And it doesn't take too long to really realize who you don't like, but what you can do is once you find out somebody who's interesting, look them up on YouTube. Step two is look them up on YouTube. Listen to them sit down and talk in their own words about what they have as a vision for the country. And the reason I say YouTube and not watch the Democratic debate or the whatever debates that are on TV is because those debates are not formatted to allow you to sit down and listen to what their actual opinions are. again, this is where, Donald Trump was up there. He actually, he had accused somebody of their father assassinating Kennedy back in '63, and he even insulted one of their wives. Like that's the sort of thing that happens on the debates that gets people attention and news coverage, and that's not what you want to go for. You want to go for the candidates' actual message about how they're going to improve on our nation, our country, what their vision for the future actually is, and their policy plans on how they're going to get there. Not just necessarily empty rhetoric where they say, oh, we need to lead by example and have the best character and beat the moral, that's not the kind of thing that's going to get us anywhere. We need people who have actual plans of how they're going to get there. So, again, step one, Google search, figure out who the candidates are, or talk to a friend who actually pays attention to this stuff. Step two, again, look them up on YouTube. Find a video where they're talking to you or they're having an interview with a one-on-one and find out what their plan is. If you do that, you're going to be way ahead of the curve, more than most Americans, and that can actually shape our democracy. Now, to actually vote in those primary elections, you actually have to be registered to vote in many states as a Democrat for the Democratic primary or as a Republican for the Republican primary. Some states, like North Carolina, I'm actually unaffiliated and I can choose which one I want to vote in, and so I will be voting in the Democratic primary in this state. And so the best thing you can do is, if you tend to vote one side or the other, just register as that party, and then you know that you can vote in their primary. And that's going to help you decide who makes it to this point here. You get to decide who goes to the Super Bowl, right? You may not care about Eagles versus Patriots in the Super Bowl, but if you have a different team, that you want to root for, you help get them there by supporting them in the season before that, okay? And that's kind of how politics works. So you have to support either Bernie Sanders or Andrew Yang or somebody who has a positive vision for the future, and not wait until you get to the end and you say, oh, it's Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump. That's all I have to choose from. Because actually, she's floated the idea of running again. As insane as that sounds, she might even run again. And they're trying to stop Bernie Sanders from winning. So you have to pay attention before it gets to that point. That's the whole point of this video. Google search, YouTube, vote in the primary, and don't let it get to the point where it's only Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, and it's just sort of a lesser evil choice. Don't make the country choose between the lesser of two evils when we can actually decide beforehand who gets there. All right, guys. If this video was helpful, give it a like, give it a share, and I hope that this actually encourages somebody to even if one person gets out and votes that wouldn't have voted, I did my job today, and it was worth me taking the time to make this video. So I appreciate it. I hope you guys have a great day. Don't forget to vote.